What is going on, you stallions and stallionettes? AK-40 Kevin here in the gamer heaven. So Phil Spencer and the boys over there at Xbox are starting to play a little rough with Sony. This is in regards to the Bethesda acquisition and making games exclusive to the Game Pass platform, i.e. Xbox One, Series, and PC. I made a video just a couple days ago showing that 20 new titles have been added to Game Pass playable right now, and 5 of them are about to get a nice little frames per second boost. Let's talk about it. Alrighty guys, share my screen here. Anytime I cover an article or any kind of news, I cite my sources. So this article and this one will be linked in the description below. I made some pretty little highlights on here for the key points so I don't miss anything. So basically Phil Spencer and the boys over there have been kind of tap dancing around the ideology that these titles, these Bethesda studio titles, as well as all the ZeniMax studios. So there's 8 studios under the ZeniMax media umbrella, including Bethesda, that those games are going to be exclusive to Xbox and Windows 10 PCs. And I mean, that should kind of be a given. This was the largest video game studio acquisition in history at $7.5 billion. Obviously, Phil Spencer and Xbox, they want to get an ROI, or return on their investment. The best way to do that is to get Bethesda titles exclusive to their platform. Yeah, it sucks for Nintendo and Sony, but I will say, neither of those platforms have any issues with a lack of exclusives. Sony has fantastic first-party Sony studio titles if they need to. If they're hurting for a squirt and hurting for another exclusive, they can make another Uncharted game, they can make another Last of Us game, they can make another Spider-Man, God of War, Gran Turismo, that's been delayed, but that is in the works, Ratchet and Clank, Rift Apart. They have a ton of exclusives. It's not like they're hurting for a couple of Bethesda titles. Same thing with Nintendo. I mean, they've got Zelda and Pokemon and, Animal Crossing, if you like to cross animals and stuff. So not a big deal there. I mean, these other studios need to understand that this is business, and the fact that they spent $7.5 billion. Prior to this deal, the largest monetary value of a video game studio takeover was $440 million. So $7.5 billion, that's off the scales. That broke a major ceiling when it comes to video game studio acquisition. So obviously, Xbox is in their full right to make Bethesda titles exclusive to Game Pass, and they'd kind of be stupid not to. So anyway, Phil Spencer, who by the way I'm going to make a separate video on, knows just about everything there is to know about the Xbox branch of Microsoft. So basically he says that Bethesda games will be exclusive to platforms where Game Pass exists, so i.e. the Xbox consoles and Windows 10 PCs. And I do mention this all the time, Game Pass is a tremendous value, especially if you get Game Pass Ultimate, which, if you're somebody like myself that plays PC and console, almost all these games, you can save your progress on your PC, go to your bedroom or living room where you have your console, pick up the progress there, all your trophies are synced up and everything. It's just really nice. Not sponsored by them or anything like that, but there is a link in the description below if you do want to pick up Game Pass. I do strongly recommend it, especially if you got an Xbox Series S like myself, because you're trying to get into the next generation of Xbox gaming with the lowest possible entry cost. So the only games, it seems like, that are not going to be exclusive to the Microsoft platform are games that already have pre-existing contractual obligations or contracts under development with Sony. For example, Deathloop was already lauded as being a PS5 exclusive, and it shall be. So it was written, it shall be. So, obviously Phil Spencer's not going to go through the paperwork of trying to cancel previous contracts and stuff, not to mention that's a dickhead move, and Microsoft doesn't really pull very many asshole-ish moves when it comes to their video game platform, so I don't think that's going to be an issue. I'm going to read this statement here from Philly Phil. Obviously, I can't sit here and say every Bethesda game is exclusive because we know that's not true. There are contractual obligations that we're going to see through, as we always do when one of these instances. We have games that exist on other platforms, and we're going to go support those games on the platforms that they're on. There are communities of players, and we love those communities and will continue to invest in them. And even in the future, there might be things that have contractual things or legacy on different platforms that we'll go do. So what he's saying is basically they're not going to screw other platforms like PlayStation and Nintendo by stopping updates and software support and bug and glitch fixes through patches, soft and hard patches for the Nintendo Switch and the PlayStation 4 and 5, because they're not assholes over there. But what they will do is future AAA Bethesda titles are going to drop on Game Pass, and they are going to have seniority and priority over there. Switching over to this article over here, this is something I'm extremely excited about. I gotta say, Xbox, you know, got to caveat this for the fanboy so that nobody jumps down my throat or anything like that, but I have a PS5 and an Xbox Series S. Also have a gaming PC and a jailbroken Wii. So I've rounded out the gaming spectrum, if you will. I don't have a affinity or affiliation or even a real preference when it comes to any of these consoles. If it's good, I'm going to play it. Now, I can see with my peepers here that both these consoles do definitely have very definitive pros and cons with this generation. And I will say Xbox's thus far has been backward compatibility, not just more titles, easier to play on the Xbox Series, but they're also boosted up. Xbox 360, Xbox One, legacy games have been boosted up with frame rate boosts and also HDR support. Now, these are also going to be applicable to 5 new Bethesda games, which is awesome. So, after the launch of FPS Boost in February with a handful of games, it was 5, but there are other games prior to FPS Boost that were automatically upscaled and playable with 120 frames per second. For example, the Halo Master Chief Collection, a lot of the remastered God of War titles, Forza Horizon, those are 120 frames per second, 4K or 1440, depending if you're on the Series X or the Series S. But there are going to be 5 games from Bethesda. Why am I having a hard time with that? Bethesda that will soon have frames per second boost support. So that's good. The games that are in question here, and I don't know if this is true or not. So the 5 games that they're around the rumor mill right now are Fallout 4, good. Fallout 76, why? Put those, reallocate those resources towards another game that people actually enjoy. Now I know 76, it's kind of like No Man's Sky or No Man's By. They have made it a lot better. Hopefully that happens with like Anthem. But 76 is literally the worst game in the Fallout series. So I don't know why they're going to give that an FPS boost. Prey, that makes sense. Elder Scrolls Skyrim Special Edition, that's all the DLC, definitely makes sense. And Dishonored, definitely makes sense. Fallout 76, get that out of there. Get Doom Eternal in here. That's also a Bethesda title, playable on Game Pass. The games that benefit most from a frames per second boost are high motion first-person shooters and racing games, because that's when a frame per second or high refresh rate will help you get wins, victories, and kills. Something like an MMORPG, where it's mostly dialogue or walking around farming and harvesting turnips for a gilded breastplate or something, that doesn't really matter. So, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, I had that conversation in such fluid, smooth motion that it helped me to complete the conversation quicker. Doesn't matter. Fallout 4 makes sense. Great game. 76, that is an online-only experience that a lot of people just don't play because it's not great. It's gotten better, but it's still not great. So I would say ditch that and get Doom in there, because Doom, I mean, from somebody who's played it at like 170 frames per second on my PC, granted my monitor's 144, so that's all I was really seeing, is still a hell of a fluid experience for a fast-paced game where you can run around and just lay a mollywhopping on some demons. So that would make more sense to me. More dollars and cents. And the journalists over here at Kotaku make a good point that the Fallout 4 could have already been running at 60 frames per second on the Xbox with mod support to achieve similar performance boosts, but now it'll be a feature that you don't have to run some mod script or anything. It's just baked into the game, which I think is really cool. It sounded like it might happen when the next Xbox Series XS update rolls out, which will add per game settings, allowing players to toggle auto HDR, high dynamic range, and a frames per second boost on games that support it. So that's another feature that I'm very excited about. It'll give you another reason to want to revisit these old 360, Xbox Original, Xbox One titles when they now look a lot more modern. They have HDR graphics, they have better textures and shaders, and they have a higher frame rate. They're going to look almost as good as modern games. So again, that'll give you a reason to want to revisit your old library, and that's awesome. That is what I think Xbox and Microsoft is doing better this generation than Sony. Sony's doing some other stuff I'll talk about in a separate video. It made older games feel more modern and playable without the need for extra mods or downloads. I'm excited to see something like Fallout 76, gross, will run with a FPS boost, and its performance on consoles is notoriously bad. So Consoles are naturally at a disadvantage from PC when it comes to frame rate, and that's not necessarily because of the hardware, but it's also because of the game development process. Now, granted, the 9th generation consoles, the PS5 and the Xbox Series S and X, have definitely closed the gap in hardware between a mid to high-end PC and a gaming console. You cannot build a $500 or $300 PC that will run like the Xbox Series S or X and PS5. But when you get up there to $2,000 rigs and $3,000 rigs, the performance ceiling on PC is a lot higher. For example, I have a 3080 over here and a 10th gen i7. That's not comparable to a PS5 or an Xbox Series at all. In teraflops, in shaders, in ray tracing, in any aspect of any type of anything. That's not shitting on console at all. I love consoles I wouldn't have spent my hard-earned money to put them in my entertainment center if I didn't think that they have value. They definitely do. But because of the way games are developed, they've been developed on PC the same way, more or less, for decades. Because of that, and the fact that with PC development, they have to develop for low-end spec PCs and high-end PCs and everything in between. And as a PC player, you go into the graphical tab in the settings, and you can adjust sliders for everything. Field of view, shadows, textures, character models, like all kinds of stuff. So because of that, you can really fine tune and get the best performance out of your rig, what you're running. So yes, on consoles, you could have been running hacks and scripts that will give you frames per second boost that the developers didn't originally want you to see or whatever, or they just didn't develop. But now it's going to be baked into the Xbox platform, which I think is really, really cool. Pardon me. You ever have that feeling like you feel like you're about to burp, but it's not there, it's on the cusp? Or maybe it's a hiccup, or maybe it's a sneeze, or maybe it's another bodily function, and it's right there and you think it might happen, and you're in the middle of shooting a YouTube video, but you don't want to cut the footage, so you just keep rolling. Yeah, that's what just happened to me. It was weird. So again, guys, these articles are linked in the description below if you want to read them in their entirety to kind of educate yourself, but, I pretty much summarized everything that's in these articles. If this video was beneficial for you guys, it was informative and entertaining, liking the video definitely helps it to get seen by more people, helps me to grow my little YouTube channel, which I greatly, greatly appreciate from the bottom of my brown eye. I do. Subscribe for more content like this. I do a lot of news in the gaming community and industry, as well as tutorials helping you get set up streaming and YouTubing, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.